pleasure and an honor to rise in this House to speak on behalf of the people of Toronto Centre. And I think I'm going to stretch that out a little bit. I'm going to speak for a lot more than just the people in my riding, but for a lot of Torontonians who would love to fill this chamber and to tell this government directly that they're going in the opposite direction and certainly in the wrong direction when it comes to Bill 1110 entitled Building Billy Bishop Airport Act. I have had the distinct experience of working with Premier Ford when he was a rookie councillor at City Council, and he was a bit of an outlier on council. He would be floating these ideas without ever talking to anybody, then he would announce them as if they were happening for real. And so things that rookie councillor, City Councillor Ford used to propose would include building a Ferris wheel on the waterfront, building a monorail on the waterfront, building a mega mall on the waterfront, and City Council would take none of it seriously because we knew that he didn't bring any credibility to the debate. So I find it very interesting coming here to this chamber and to this House in 2023 about how every member of the Conservative government would take rookie councillor, now Premier, so seriously whenever an idea pops into his head. Whether it's the destruction of Ontario Place or, letting the Science Centre close, tunneling under the 401, there seems to be no independent thought or analysis on why these things would come forward without a shred of evidence. Decisions are made without any facts, simply because the boss told you so. So, if I was to sum up what the government is about, this Conservative government is about, and if someone was to ask me, what do I see? I would tell them to take a look at this bill, Bill 110. It has all the trademarks of a rookie councillor Ford government backroom deal. The misuse of emergency powers of the provincial government to escape accountability, the Premier acting in cosplay to play the Mayor of Toronto, and if he wants to scribble all over Toronto's harbourfront and waterfront, I would invite him to come to my desk. I'm going to give him a copy of this colouring book that I created for him so he can channel all his creative energy into colouring this waterfront colouring book, as opposed to scribbling all over our waterfront. The back of napkin plans that have no feasibility, no budget, no credibility whatsoever are taken so seriously. And they're forwarded here in the form of legislation, and we have to waste our time on these debates. It is so insulting to the residents of Toronto to have a Premier that overreaches all the time, overrides their council, overrides neighbourhoods, and overrides their rights as citizens of this city and this province, and continually be ignored. There's no spending oversight for a bunch of folks who talk about being fiscal conservatives and fiscal responsible people. There's no environmental assessments here. It merely is another bright, shiny idea coming from a Premier who wants to enrich his friends and ignore Ontarians. There's a lack of clarity for me as someone who has been an active user of the waterfront and someone who has been on City Council for 12 years who's debated the waterfront debate on the merits of its case with feasibility reports as well as many other documentation before us other than a short bill. So I find it very confusing. And perhaps it's largely because it's designed that way, to befog all of us, to speak in platitudes as opposed to the facts. What you're proposing is extremely expensive. It's going to be an environmental disaster, and we are not even acknowledging that. In Toronto, our city, we have moved away from industrial uses on the waterfront, and it's taken decades of master planning to do so. I want to say that the federal Liberals could put a stop to all of this madness right now. They have an 80% stake in this whole discussion around the island airport. There's 3 signatures to the tripartite agreement: the Toronto Ports Authority, Transport Canada, and the City of Toronto. The City of Toronto has already told you what they think. They want you to leave their waterfront alone. This province couldn't do anything without the federal government stepping in to say, you can have Toronto's waterfront and do as you please. With one single phone call, the Prime Minister could put a stop to this nonsense. I encourage and even challenge my Liberal caucus, well, there's only one member here, but, to call your MP, my friend, and to ask the Prime Minister to express himself as clearly as possible.
I'm going to ask the members to keep their voice down. It's a little bit too early. We've got a long way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you. But essentially, this whole debate would be moot if we heard from the federal Liberals about what they intend to do, what their true intentions are. So, to the Prime Minister, we're waiting to hear from you as clearly as possible, and we urge you to speak up now, because if you can't stand up to this Premier, how can we trust you to stand up for us on the world stage? I'm going to give you 12 reasons why we cannot and should not expand the Billy Bishop Airport. Number 1, the airport is simply too small. It's the smallest airport in Canada at only 210 acres. The next smallest North American airport that handles jets is in San Diego, and that's sitting at 630 acres. The Premier seizing all of Toronto Islands and much of the Little Norway Park, which now you've backpedaled on because you've heard from the public pressure, will only enable some clear-cutting of trees. All of this to accommodate what you think is going to be 10 million additional passengers. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2 why you should not expand the Billy Bishop Airport is that traffic would become a nightmare. If you think it's bad to get through Toronto now, what do you think a 450% increase in traffic will do? Anyone taking the Porter shuttle already knows it takes about 20 minutes from the Union Station to Billy Bishop Airport during rush hour traffic. I can get to Pearson from Union in about 25 minutes. You are going to choke off Toronto's downtown and our central business district and our waterfront with 10 million passengers running through what is ultimately a dead-end street. Where Queens Quay and Bathurst Street meet, this tiny little stub that taxis and you travel along is called Arian Quay. It is essentially a cul-de-sac. I challenge you to show me the traffic management plan that will tell me that you won't need more land. You're not going to get there any faster, and we know that. The third reason why you should not expand the airport is that on Monday, May the 11th, in exactly 5 days, Pearson International Airport is breaking ground to expand Terminals 1 and 3. They are moving from 47 million passengers to 70 million passengers. The reality is that aviation future in Toronto does not need an expansion of the Billy Bishop Airport. They're adding more taxi stands for the planes, more lanes, more slots, more gates. It is already designed and costed, and I'm going to venture out that perhaps a few of the cabinet ministers might even be there for the groundbreaking. So it's simply not necessary. Fourth reason, runway extensions will close off most of the harbour to boats and create a stagnant swamp to the west of the airport. You can say goodbye to the Western Channel, Trillium Park, East Island, West Island, the Amphitheatre, and Ontario Place. That new luxury spa is going to watch jets fly by every 2.5 minutes. You will also need about 600 meters to about 1.2 kilometers of additional airport lighting. This will cut across the marine exclusion zones that will be absolutely necessary to accommodate jets. The boats, the sailors, our canoeists, our kayakers, none of them will be able to cross anymore. You're essentially even blocking off Hanlon's Point Ferry. This Conservative government has failed to consider the economic impact of what a smelly, loud waterfront with no views will do to attract visitors. You fail to account for the economic impact of essentially closing down our harbour. Hanlon's Point, 4. It's a critical site for queer and trans history, as well as a current gathering place for many in our community. The same will go for Centre Island, Faraway Farm, Ward's Island, Olympic Island. It's all there, and it is a beautiful national, and I would say, natural treasure. We all have memories of visiting those islands. It was my first experience here in Canada of what is expansive green space as a poor immigrant kid. The ferry was my very first boat ride in this country. Don't destroy that. It's not safe, this expansion of the airport. The Billy Bishop Island Airport today does not meet Transport Canada's safety standards, TP 124 The current airport operates under many exemptions from safety standards. The standards specified a primary hazard zone that includes all of the waterfront buildings, the Toronto Islands, Tommy Thompson Park, and the mouth of the Don River, which has recently been renaturalized. Transport Canada says that wildlife refuges are at a high risk and an unacceptable land use if within the prime hazard zone if an airport is expanded due to the risk of bird strikes. In 2009, we saw an Airbus A320 strike a flock of Canada geese shortly after their takeoff in LaGuardia, resulting in a dual-engine failure. The plane landed in the Hudson River, and that incident was captured around the world. It was even depicted in the movie called Sully. A turboprop plane landing every 20 minutes now, reverting to a jet taking off every 2 to 3 minutes, is going to vastly increase the risk of bird strikes. How many other accidents and incidents are going to take place because of your poor planning? Birds tend to bounce off those turboprop planes, but they get sucked into jet engines. This is a description of what will happen if the waterfront is destroyed. You will not see picnic areas. They will be turned into nothing more than industrial wasteland. There are health impacts to consider. The 2017 environmental assessment from the Toronto Port Authority notes that the sound levels could result in hypertension, in ischemic heart disease, and they identified increased risk of respiratory illness as well as increased risk of cardiopulmonary disease and lung cancer. That's directly from the Port Authority's environmental assessment. Reason number 8, there's 2 elementary schools there and countless recreational areas where children will be affected. The noise from jets flying out every 2.5 minutes will disrupt learning. Children who are especially those who are sensitive to poor air quality will see a higher outbreak of asthma. Reason number 9, it's a waste of money, waste of public money. Taxpayers have already invested billions of dollars to develop the waterfront, Toronto's waterfront, into Canada's #1 tourist destination, with over 28 million visitors. It is also currently home to over 100,000 families. If these assets are ruined, there'll be a massive knockdown on economic and social effects to the downtown, the waterfront, and the island businesses. And we also know there'll be a significant reduction of the quality of life. You just have to ask those right now who live across the Billy Bishop Island Airport, and they'll tell you things have not been getting better. It's gotten worse. And if the government had a business case that they could be proud of, if you are so darn proud of your financial largesse, well, show us your business plan now. Convince us as opposed to hide from us. Show everybody that you've got the receipts. Reason number 10, it would be a disaster for wildlife, particularly the migratory birds that use the Leslie Street Spit and the islands as stopover places. These stopovers divert the birds from our downtown, dramatically reducing the number of birds that hit the buildings. This will save their lives and also reduce the issues that we are experiencing in downtown. If you ever walked in the downtown corridor and you're wondering why there's a dead bird in front of you in the financial district, they probably struck a building. Which is why Toronto has been so aggressive in adapting green building standards, which you've just gutted. Birds are crucial to our ecosystem, and we must protect them to preserve our food webs and our pollinator habitats and more. Reason 11, follow the money. The main beneficiary is J.P. Morgan's subsidiary, Newport Aviation. In 2015, Newport Aviation bought the Billy Bishop Airport Terminal from Porter Airlines for $750 million. 2 years later, they went to court. They had to sue Porter to recover up to $130 million, and they won for unpaid passenger terminal fees and charges accrued during COVID, as well as costs and damages. And since then, the pandemic, passenger traffic at Billy Bishop Airport is down by 1/3. You're only moving 1.7 million passengers compared to what Pearson is moving, projected to move at 70 million passengers. They're losing money. They've lost 800,000 passengers, and they can't reclaim it 6 years later after the pandemic. So why would you ask Ontarians to underwrite the profits of a big American bank? Reason number 12. The expansion of Billy Bishop Airport is going to bring with it many, many jets. We know that. But the flight paths, which I have quite a bit of experience in, is going to reduce the height of buildings, in particular the Portlands, which has approved over 30,000 new units of housing. And the modeling that we have done means that those high-rise buildings are going to see a 15 to 20-story cut in the height of their buildings. It just so happens that out of the 30,000 new homes approved on the Portlands, which has been a 10-year plan, is going to see that reduced by maybe about 10,000 units. So why would we in the City of Toronto and Ontario, facing a housing crisis, not build those extra 10,000 homes? 10,000 families can move into them, and you're suggesting that we don't do it in the middle of the biggest housing crisis that this province has seen? I'm sure I'll come up with a few more reasons on why Billy Bishop Airport can't be expanded and should not be expanded. If I get a chance to debate this again, I certainly will bring up probably another 12 more reasons, but those are the ones I can think of right now. The Ontario government's arguments are simply false. And we have now seen that this government has said that the Billy Bishop Airport is going to support this sort of business travel environment. Let me bring you back to a time when I was at City Council when they told us that we needed to allow jets on Billy Bishop Airport because we're going to expand the business traveler class. Well, interestingly enough, where do people fly out of Billy Bishop in their flip-flops? Well, it just so happens that they're flying to Miami, Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, Palm Springs, Fort Myers, Tampa. They're recreational flyers. They're going on vacation at the convenience of our waterfront. So no one is buying that the international business traveler needs to fly out of the Billy Bishop Airport. We don't. We get to Pearson. So flights are not going to be cheaper, as we know. If I go onto a website right now and determine which flight is cheaper, if I need to fly out of Billy Bishop or Pearson, I find that they're comparable. We have now seen this government not be truthful when it comes to the facts. They are determined to do what they want to do, and it really is perplexing to me and all my residents on why they're insisting on this very expensive, very acrimonious proposition, one that will put our waterfront at risk, that will permanently alter it forever, and dare I say, destroy it, And I cannot stand by, not even for a moment, without giving it my full-hearted, full-body resistance at